Hi and welcome back to It's a Miracle Beauty. My name is Brandy. We are a beauty review channel. We do unboxings, mystery boxes, foundation reviews, eyeshadow reviews, and anything in that genre. Today is the second part of my collab with Nona from My So-Called Life 1977. We are hoping to bring awareness and spotlight to invisible illness. This is meant as an education versus a criticism, although I think sometimes I get a little passionate and it sounds more critical. But it is to help people understand that not everything that people are going through is on the outside, is super visible and everything else, and just to have kindness towards your fellow man or woman, etc. I met Nona through YouTube, commenting on each other's stuff, and she's just really stepped forward and been a real leader for me. She sets a wonderful example in her kindness, and her ability to keep that attitude just is amazing. Like, I think that that's when somebody is literally, like I think I said, she exudes kindness because it's innate for her. It's not something she has to work at, in my opinion, and she can comment down below and let me know, but it seems to me it's just a natural thing for her. So I was really excited to work on this collab. We both struggle with invisible illness, so it was really nice to work with someone who understood what I was going through and I understood what she was going through. So I hope you like this series, and I hope that you will like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and I will be posting Nona's channel down in the box as well as up in the cards. So if you would go like, share, and subscribe to her channel, I think you'd really enjoy it. Today I am reviewing the e.l.f. Bite Size Shadow. It's called Rose Water. It does look like this, and it does look like this. And if you think that that's something you would like to see, I hope that you will keep watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Let's do it. Okay, so as you saw in the intro and in the title, I am reviewing the Rose Water e.l.f. Bite Size Palette. I'm going to start with this transition shade right here. I have used this before, and it is my exact, almost skin tone. It doesn't really deepen much. It works good as a good transition. I do have my eyelids primed with Tarte Shape Tape today, and then my Too Faced powder, I set it. Okay. Next I'm going to go in with this middle gray shade right here. One of the things I want to talk about in this series that we're doing about You Don't Look Sick or Invisible Illness is how many times things you perceive, or not you personally, people perceive as laziness or lack of want to do better or things like that, sometimes as a byproduct or a symptom of our disease. So I am spraying my brush with some setting spray and then bouncing off some of that moisture so it's not crazy wet. So an example of this is steroids is something I have to take because I'm allergic to the lupus meds that I would normally take. Normally I would take Plaquenil, which is the drug that is under a lot of assumption, research, everything for coronavirus treatment. I actually was prescribed that back in, I believe, 2010, 2011, and I had a specific allergic reaction that makes your skin literally burn. I had to be in the hospital and on very high steroids in order to stop the reaction, so I can't take that. So in order to treat a lupus flare-up, the only thing that they're left with is steroids. So it's one of the things that are a necessary evil of my disease, but on the same point it can cause people to have certain assumptions. So most people have taken steroids. They get a cold, pneumonia, things like that, and it affects your breathing. Oftentimes they give you a steroid, either orally or inhaled. And so a lot of people have tried them, but it's completely different when your endocrine system is overwhelmed by steroids repeatedly over and over and over. It literally changes how your body responds to things, but also there's symptoms that are a byproduct of those steroids. So next I'm actually going to go into this shade right here for my outer corner. I did use this the other day and I had a lot of problems with this shade. So I used a different concealer and powder this time, and I'm hoping that it's a little bit better. This is one I thought was great for every day because it's neutral. But steroids cause you to have absolute emotional swings. And then on top of that, it typically causes insomnia as well. So you're adding to the moodiness when you can't sleep. And then it typically has you gain weight. A lot of people have bloating and weight gain when they're on steroids. And if you, again, think of a maintenance life dose, if you're taking steroids on any long-term basis, it's not healthy. But if it means your kidney, liver, whatever, brain isn't being attacked by the disease, then they feel like it's a necessary evil. The steroids actually have put me into perimenopause. So even though I'm only 41, almost 42, I'm already full swing in. Like an example is, I typically, instead of having 12 periods per year, I have somewhere between 8 and 10. And then some of my periods, I actually only have a 23-day cycle, or 21 day, or 20. So, I accidentally dipped in the wrong color. Let me just wipe that off. So mine is just, my system has just had havoc wrecked by the steroids. So it's definitely something that people don't get. So people that are on long-term steroid doses, O2, and this is not the only example, but it's one that I personally live, so it was easy for me to speak on, is it causes weight gain, and it also causes, it doesn't help pain, and it doesn't help energy. So if you combine the steroid side effects with your lupus or autoimmune or whatever you're dealing with that they gave you the steroids, it actually makes you a lot more exhausted. So lethargy is really, really hard to fight. The fatigue is, for lack of a better word, criminal. I mean, like literally, it's hard to go to the bathroom sometimes when the pain gets that high, and it's just a really hard thing. I personally try to never take pain meds. I can't say I never have. I mean, I think it was February of 19. I was in the hospital for a week, and they were giving me mainly anti-inflammatories, but they did move in some pain meds because I literally didn't sleep for 3 days because the pain was so bad. So I try not to take them if I can help it, but there are times that it just becomes unavoidable. The other thing I wanted to say about this is when people gain weight, again, and the energy, it goes back kind of like the handicap parking sticker I gave an example of. We are given this because our medical staff feels we need it. They know what we're going through, not better than us, but probably better than anybody else, especially if it's the doctor that you see the most for that disorder, whether it be your GP or your, rheumatologist, whatever it is that's in charge of it, is they know, and that's why they wrote it. But people will say, oh, she just wants it because she's fat. She just wants it because she's lazy. She this, she that. They don't realize the absolute everyday struggle that people like me are in. I personally try to live it in a more positive thing. Like when I don't have flare-ups for a long time, I absolutely get everything that I can. I will clean my house. I'll do everything I have to while I'm not in a flare-up, because sometimes I'm spraying another one to use in that shimmer. Sometimes it's you do it now or you don't do it. I mean, it's literally, that's the case. I don't want that brush. So I am spraying my brush with some setting spray, tapping it off just to make sure there's no excess liquid. I am going to go in this shade now in my front corner, almost like a gradient. So it's unfortunate that people can't understand that not everything is visible, but there's a lot of other invisible illnesses I think that are often either trivialized, either by the media or by individuals, or people make assumptions that aren't necessarily accurate. A few that come to mind are anxiety and depression, mental illness, things like that. People are not their diagnosis. They don't walk around going, hey, I can't stand close to you because I have PTSD and that makes me uncomfortable. Hey, I can't stand close to you because it gives me anxiety to be in crowds. That's viewed as weak in our society, so people just actually traumatize themselves over and over and over to try to fit in society. Whereas if society would stop and listen to the experts. You don't even have to listen to me. Listen to any psychologist when they talk about these things. They have different reactions. Now, I don't believe that I have PTSD or anything of that level, but I do have a history of abuse that made me uncomfortable around men. And so it did make me have to learn in college when someone would run up the stairs behind me. It would make me stop and just not be able to breathe. I could not function. As time went on, as I kept putting myself in those stairwells, it did get better and I was able to cope with relatively little anxiety, or I can't say the anxiety was still there, but the reaction wasn't the same. So I was able to fix that. One of the things I would like people to take away from the invisible illness kind of awareness is not everything's visible, and that seems so easy. Oh yeah, I know I can't see anxiety, but actually if you watch people closely, people that have internal struggles, whether it be emotional, social, physical, whatever it is, they are different. Like me, a really big example is I can be in a great mood and be really physical, and I'll start in the back of the parking lot, park back there, want to get my steps in, whatever, walk in the store. When I get into the store, I'm exhausted. So you'll see me where I'm only grabbing 2 things, but now I have to grab a cart or a basket because I couldn't carry them. There's a lot of different examples too. If you watch someone who is having anything to do with anxiety, typically there's perspiration, typically there's breathing like variances, typically there's just a lot of uncomfortable shifting and things like that. And again, everybody does it differently, but it is something when I was in my program in school that we talked about. So I have my bachelor's in psychology, and then I'm 12 credits short of a master's in history, mainly racial history, African anarchist history, things like that. I originally was in African history, however, there's not a lot of programs in Michigan for it in my area. Michigan State has a great one, but there's not a lot in my area. So when I was in my psychology program, one of the things they taught us about when you're either a psychologist or a counselor is to view the body's reactions to things. So one of the things, like some of the case studies we studied, people shifted their weight back and forth, kind of a nervous movement. They perspirate. They have visible frowning. They are trying to internalize everything, but they can't help exuding some of it. So that's one of the things I just suggest people watch for. I'm not telling you to stare at everybody. I'm just saying if you really watch key activities, you can kind of see that you may have assumed they had that space, or you may have assumed, basically they told us that just to watch for things because there's responds and movements that you may not realize are keys to what they're going through internally. And maybe that would help you understand and be more empathetic to what someone's going through. I think that you never know someone else's battle, really. Even like if you look at lupus, every single lupus patient has a completely different experience. And I think that anxiety and depression and anything that affects you as a person, I think would be the same. I think that everybody copes different. Everybody has different symptoms. Like, it really does make a really big difference once you try to understand. So I am just adding, this is the K Voss Fairy Dust. It does look like this, and the front looks like this. And I was just highlighting my brow bone. There really isn't a shade. The inner corner shade isn't as deep, so I didn't want to use that there. I am going to go back in with that middle shade and just kind of sharpen this up a little bit. It kind of overshadowed by the other 2 colors. I think with everything going on, one of the things that are becoming really imperative in our society is to listen to someone else about their experience. And listen, not to respond, but to understand. I think that's really easy for people to say, well, I see you in the street, I know what your experience is. Or, hey, my cousin is this, that, or the other, so I know your experience. Every single person has their own experiences and their own stressors or their own struggles that they go through, and it's really unfortunate that people try to define it for them. So that is the finished look. I'm going to go finish my makeup, and then I will come back and give you some final thoughts on my thought of the performance of this eyeshadow. I realized I did not talk a lot while I was doing it, but because this is the second time I used it in this week, I think I can give some pretty good review and things like that of the palette. So I will be right back. So just some final thoughts on the palette. First of all, I want to thank Nona for collaborating with me on these. I think it's such a great idea because we're reviewing in the same product line. It's kind of neat to see how they each work with each of us and the looks that we come up with. So first of all, I want to thank Nona. Some final thoughts on the palette. I think that this is probably not my favorite. Not because it's necessarily horrible, but I do think you have to work with it. I think that the pink shade right here that I actually blended into the center of my eye washes away relatively easy, and it does have a lot of fallout. I tested this the other day, kind of want to get a feel for the shadows, and it literally, I had fallout through here that was very thick, and if you look at this video, there's fallout as well. I think that it does just crumble away really easy. I think that this shade right here is the standout shade in the palette. It is a like champagne-y shimmer, and it does work great. I did notice that it didn't fall. I didn't have fallout from that shadow. This base shade is pretty much my skin color, so it didn't offer anything dimension wise. However, it was nice to create a smooth blending base. And then lastly, this one is pretty much garbage to me. I've been working all morning trying to get this to be okay, and all morning it's wiped away. If I blink, it creates a spot. This just isn't a shadow that I personally will reach for. I probably, if I use this one again, I would use another bite size with it to give a deepening shade. So overall, I mean, for $3, you're still getting 3 shades that you can definitely use, 2 of which are phenomenal. So I think for $3, it's not like, I can't complain about it. It does have some things I wish were improved, but that's what it is. So if you like these types of reviews, if you want to continue to watch Nona and I do these collabs, I hope that you'll subscribe, like, ring the bell for notifications, and please comment down below one thing that you repurchase that's super affordable, that is a holy grail in your collection. Thank you guys. Have a great day.